Well, this is unexpected. Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and Kathleen Kennedy is out, and Dave Filoni is in. We don't do breaking news live streams, but this is such a big deal for Star Wars fans. I really wanted to talk to somebody about it, and I'm in the store all alone because Doug is having nap time. We do have a friend or two who's going to be joining us in just a second. But just before we get into that, I want to give you guys the lowdown of what the news is here. So, Kathleen Kennedy, the great Kathleen Kennedy, who was a producer on such films as E.T. and Jurassic Park, has finally stepped down from Lucasfilm. This has been a long time coming. We expected it. She's in her 70s. She had to retire at some point, although she has said she's going to make movies and TV shows till the day she dies. I'm going to talk about Kathleen Kennedy's history at Lucasfilm, what she got wrong, what she got right. There's a lot of good that she did. First of all, though, before I bring on our first guest, Mr. Pete Fletzer, who is author of Who Owns the Myth, a book that I have, but is not in this room, so I can't quite show it to you guys. I'll grab it in a second, but I want to give you the TLDR here, just reading off some notes. So Kathleen Kennedy stepped down. Dave Filoni, who, of course, got his start in animation, among many things, directed the pilot of Avatar, the Last Airbender, show I just finished watching, actually, for the first time. And by the way, give us your super chats. We'll get to them here in a minute. Dave Filoni, who co-created the Clone Wars along with George Lucas, co-created Ahsoka Tano, lots of other great characters, has done some not so great things at Lucasfilm and Star Wars, in my opinion, is now president of Lucasfilm. But he is the chief creative officer and president. It's actually going to be a co-president role. Now, this is similar to what James Gunn and his producing partner, Peter Safran, do at DC. Peter Safran does the business side. James Gunn handles the creative side. The co-president along with him, as I'm going to pronounce this wrong, maybe Pete can help me with this, Lin-Wen Brennan, who's going to handle more of like the business side of everything. So Filoni's going to oversee the creative direction of everything, not just Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, all the other aspects of Lucasfilm, while Brennan's going to manage business operations and the studio's technical divisions like Industrial Light and Magic, etc. And this is part of a strategic shift that Disney is doing. They're trying to put more control in the hands of the creatives, and they're doing this across the board with a lot of their different things. Now, I could keep talking, but let me bring on my guest here, and we might have other people pop in too. Basically, I texted Pete and everybody else I know, like, do you guys want to hop on this live stream? So we may have some special guests pop in. Mr. Pete Fletzer. Oh my God, Fletzer. Sorry, I always want to say Fletzer. Yeah, sorry about that.
I'll hold it up.
There's the book. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, dude, what's your take on this? I'm going to take myself off the stage while you answer. For me, I'm not sure if he's frozen for you guys. Pete, can you hear me?
I'm back. I think I'm back.
Great. Yeah, I can see and hear you just fine. What's your take on all? Well, Pete keeps freezing for me. Pete, what's going on there, buddy?
I'm so excited about this news. I've pulled the plug on the internet because I just don't want to see what everybody's going to say. How's it going?
Well, good, man. It's really good to see it. What's your take on this, on the news?
I think it's something that as you mentioned, we've kind of been hearing about it for years and years and years. And we all thought Kathleen Kennedy was going to, go out in more of a blaze of glory. But I think this is a good move. I think Filoni, what I'm really happy about is that they're separating creative from the business side, right? And I think that may allow them to make decisions differently, right? And so that will allow Filoni, who knows Star Wars better than probably anybody else right now, and allow the business to do what they need to do and make money from the stuff that Filoni's putting together.
I agree. And I want to talk about Dave Filoni and whether or not you think he's a good fit. I like dividing the two up. Kathleen Kennedy knows movies, right? And I feel like, we can say about Kathleen Kennedy all we want. You can criticize things she did. She didn't just greenlight Andor, right? When they brought controversial things, ideas, and she courted Tony Gilroy to do Andor. And she didn't just say yes to his ideas. She pushed him further. He thought she would say no to, like, hey, let's have this show about the rise of a fascist regime and all the other really adult themes in that. She's the one who pushed those forward. So you got to give her props on that.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, like, the only concern that I might have about Filoni is that he does come from the animation world. And so what tends to happen is his stories tend to feel like they're trying to connect to the stuff that had been created already. And I think that's a little bit of
I'll
a
get to that in a
potential
second, my
issue
friend.
for him. Oh,
Yeah, no, I've
my
got some pretty
internet's going
major
crazy
issues
here.
with Ahsoka. I think you're freezing up on me a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I'm so sorry about this
Okay.
internet issue.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We're all on the fly here. I want to really quickly, I got some thoughts about Dave Filoni myself and where I think his weaknesses and strengths are. First, I want to just say hi to a new member on the channel. We got Isaac Art 408. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. And we got a super chat here from Sean Bergen 66. Does the friend know he's trapped in Mephisto's TV for $5? Pete's not trapped in a TV. Pete, you're coming from us from the Across the Galaxy podcast headquarters, aren't you?
That's right. Yes, I am.
Around the galaxy. Did I say it wrong again?
Too far.
All right, Pete, I'm sorry. You're freezing up on me again. I'm really apologize for that. Colton just gave us $10 for some reason. I'm not sure why. He says, sorry, I'm not here. It's past time for Kennedy to go, despite her being one of Hollywood's greatest producers. Filoni, I love him. But Colton says he's not a good choice for a studio head. Controversial. So we'll get to that in a second. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I got to agree with Colton on that one. I love that he's creative. I don't know if he can run a whole studio. He should stay in that creative role. He should be driving the creative. But you need some. I was hoping it was going to be somebody from either HBO or Apple or somebody who's been programming there. I think the programming on HBO has been fantastic when they've gone with some of the properties. I thought Penguin was amazing. I think some of the DC
Dune
stuff
Prophecy.
they've done has been really good. Dune Prophecy was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and I can't remember her name who was running HBO. Yeah. So I wish they had gone maybe kind of that direction. That said, there's at least a business partner there who can hopefully make sure that he stays on a track that will be. She'll do enough of the market research. She'll understand the audience. She'll do all that stuff, and perhaps they'll be able to work together.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the business partner until you said she. I didn't know the gender of the person. So this is all breaking. We're all learning things together. Sean Bergen gave us $2. Wants to know where Tommy is. Tommy's doing a set, man. He's about to go up on stage. He finally got off break long enough to go do a set at a local comedy club where he's at. So if you're in Tommy's area and you want to hear his immediate reaction to this, that's where you can find him. And Sean Bergen also said, is Kennedy the reason Palace? Well, you said, I think you meant Palpatine returned. You had an interesting autocorrect there. Maybe we get into that. Let's go through the history of Lucasfilm over the past 13 years. And I want to talk about what Kathleen Kennedy has done right and what Filoni's done right and wrong, and then where they maybe made some mistakes. Rock Me Baby Jesus gave me $2 and said, thanks, love the channel. Thanks for the hard work. Thank you so much for we don't need the money, but we like the money. Thanks so much.
Money's good.
So yeah, money's always handy. So Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm, right, were handed this mandate from Disney that said, we want to make our $4 billion back. We want to do episodes 7, 8, and 9. We want to continue the saga with legacy characters. But they also had this lofty goal of introducing a spinoff film on every off year. And they were basically planning on making Star Wars films every year for the next 100 years. Like that was the original design. Streaming in 2012, when they bought Lucasfilm, was not even a twinkle in Mickey Mouse's eye at this point. They were not thinking Disney Plus, and that really derailed their plans, I think. So the sequel trilogy happened. Originally, it was going to be done by J.J. Abrams, and Michael Arndt was working on the screenplay, but he was working on the screenplay, correct me if I'm wrong, when George Lucas was working on episode 7. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah. I can't confirm that either, but I believe that's correct. Yep.
And then Abrams decided to jettison that script because they wanted it done sooner. He brought on Lawrence Kasdan, who co-wrote Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Great call.
And if you're going to bring in a Star Wars writer, he's the guy. Because Lee Brackett's not with us, unfortunately. So that happened, and then Last Jedi came in, undid a lot of the things. I personally think Last Jedi, not to tread too far into that, I think Last Jedi took what was set up and ran with it. If you look at The Force Awakens, like Rian Johnson didn't make Luke a lonely hermit on that island. That was J.J. Abrams. And then I think everybody can agree on one thing, and that is that The Rise of Skywalker just didn't work. And it seemed very like the saga didn't have a continuity to it. They didn't have a through line. And I'm not even getting into Solo and Rogue One yet and all the problems they had. So it was clear, we all had this idea that Star Wars was a story that was happening out there somewhere. And then these movies happened, and all of a sudden it felt like, no, it's just people making it up, right? Pete, how do you think the handling of the trilogy impacts her legacy?
Well, I think, there's this fine line, right? Once Disney bought, in fact, I do talk about it in the book. I'll just throw that in there. When Disney bought the Lucasfilm and the rights to Star Wars, and what they felt like it was just going to print money. And I think the problem is it very quickly became a property versus the story that it had been successful with, right? It was a sandbox for people to create stories in, which is actually really good. That's why you got things like The Mandalorian, you got Ahsoka, and you get Rogue One and Solo. You get these good sort of independent of the Skywalker saga stories. But I think maybe the expectation was just a little bit too high, right? And I don't know if the audience, sort of Back to the Future, where he says, yeah, your kids are going to love, you're not ready for it yet, but your kids are going to love it. And I think that's kind of what they had this opportunity to do, was to kind of walk away from, because your hands are tied. If you're just going to make 20 Luke Skywalker legacy movies, that's not a deep story. But if you have this opportunity to keep creating within that place, making Andor, making things that take place in that galaxy, which is so huge, it's an entire galaxy, and there's so much to do with it. I think, as it relates directly to your question about Kathleen Kennedy, though, I think the challenge is those early years, and I'll call it the early years because it has been less prominent. It feels like her fingerprints were all over everything, as far as interrupting or having perhaps too much say on things like the creation of Solo and the creative direction of what was happening. She might have gotten out of her lane a little bit, and that may have caused some of the issues. And then when people didn't like these movies, and I love The Last Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars story. Maybe not my favorite movie, but it's my favorite Star Wars story. But when people wanted to blame somebody for, not giving them the Luke Skywalker they expected, they blamed Disney and they blamed Kathleen Kennedy. And so unfortunately, she became sort of the poster child of everything wrong with Star Wars. And that's really not a fair way to go about it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Now, we did have a question earlier that said, was she the reason Palpatine returned? The answer is kind of, because they ended up outsourcing Episode 9 to Bad Robot. So that, like, Lucasfilm essentially didn't make the movie. Bad Robot did, which was a huge mistake. And I think if you're going to, I'm not the first person to say this. You guys are saying it in the comments right now. Basically, they needed a plan for this trilogy. I mean, or at least an outline. George Lucas had an outline. Phantom Creep gave us $2. Thank you so much for that. George Lucas had an outline. It changed. Luke and Leia weren't always brother and sister, which is why, they sucked face in Episode 5. But I want to point this out too. It's interesting, the timing of this, because the sequel trilogy is essentially dead. I mean, the one of the big drawbacks of the sequel trilogy is that Episode 8 starts right after Episode 7. So there was no gap for other creatives to come in and make comics, make animation, make spin-off shows. And that's what Star Wars always did, was invite others into the imagination. And there's only 1 year gap between Episodes 8 and 9. And they've been trying to get a Rey movie off the ground for years. It takes place about 10 years after. I would love to see that movie. I loved Poe Dameron and Finn. I think that I'd like to see those characters in better films. But then the announcement came, I think it was yesterday, that they're going to alter the Galaxy's Edge park. Galaxy's Edge is no longer going to be solely set in the time and place of the sequel trilogy. Now it's going to have areas. Like if you want to meet Rey, you go to the Resistance area. But for the most part, it's going to be Vader and Luke and Han Solo. I wish I had been there when that was the case. I had to go to a special enclave to meet the Mandalorian. So it definitely seems like in some ways they're kind of looking in another direction. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think they're recognizing, and I obviously I don't have access to the facts and figures, but I would imagine, and all you got to do is look at a Target toy store, toy section area. The toys that are not selling are the ones that are unfortunately, from the sequel era, right? And
Hmm.
the toys that do sell are the classics, and they're not being bought by children. They're being bought by me and you and the adults that are walking through. And what are we buying? We're buying the original trilogy, and so I think this really makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to take this and run with it and say, well, they're killing the sequels, they're going to retcon, all the clickbait that's
Well,
going to be
no,
out
that
there for
can't.
that.
That'll never happen.
No, and it'll,
I think that one thing I'll give Kathleen Kennedy credit for, right? And
yeah,
I'm talking about Kathleen Kennedy. I do want to talk about Filoni. So believe me, we have a lot to talk about with like Ahsoka and Rebels and his trilogy, which apparently is going to happen now. One thing I'll say for Kennedy though is she recognized what you're talking about. Kathleen Kennedy knew that
yep,
Star Wars needed to grow beyond. That's why she greenlit the Acolyte, right? I think if anything, she was greenlighting things a little bit too heavily, right? She put all the chips on the Acolyte, gave it all this money when frankly, a little bit of restraint. I mean, but that's all part of the streaming era too. I think had the
yep.
Acolyte been a massive hit, had Skeleton Crew been a massive hit, maybe this move doesn't happen right now. But the fact is, every time they strayed away from original trilogy tropes and characters, fans didn't show up like they're used to.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's going to be very interesting about Starfighter and The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is now, I think, because of Grogu, I think The Mandalorian is as much a part of the Star Wars culture as the original trilogy almost, right? Maybe not, that may be an
Sure.
overstatement, but everybody knows who Baby Yoda is, right? So that's a very safe bet. In fact, I think it might be too safe. I think there's going to be a lot more riding on Starfighter now because that needs to
And
that needs
Mandalorian
to
and Grogu.
and Mandalorian Grogu, but I think Starfighter a little bit more. I think Mando and Grogu we could have a solo situation there, right? Because there's
Terrible
been
title
no
though.
terrible title,
Grogu and the
no
Mandalorian. Like what? Yeah, I don't know
top
why
billing
they
for the
did.
little
Why
guy.
it doesn't like just call it Grogu and the Mandalorian. It sounds way better. I don't know.
Like
Oh,
Grogu's
hey,
Big Adventure.
Infinite Multiverse gave us $2 and asked, can we get a Pete
Nice.
Fletzer head nod of shame?
Yep. Is that good?
Listen,
Does that work?
It works for me. I got to say this too about Kathleen Kennedy again before we get to Filoni, which all the super chats are on and now are about Filoni. Kathleen Kennedy got a raw deal just like Kevin Feige did, and the
Mhm.
pandemic hit, and then Disney panicked, right?
Yep.
Lucasfilm had this big hit with The Mandalorian, and then when the pandemic hit, suddenly the parks were shut down, movie theaters were shut down. A lot of things that should have been or could have been movies became TV shows, like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
And I don't think that was necessarily her decision.
Nah, and I think you're right. Well, I mean, there's all the talk of just all the business decisions that were going on in the background. Disney was putting a lot of pressure on them. Streaming, I mean, Kenobi could have been a much bigger success probably as a movie because they could have gone with that bigger budget and they could have made it look a little. I mean, I think that's the biggest problem with Kenobi. I think the story is really interesting, but it feels like it's shot on the volume, and it was because of pandemic and blah blah blah.
Right.
But I think you're right. I think what ended up happening too was with the pressure to create so much content on streaming and the promise of Star Wars being sort of this tent pole for Disney Plus, it force them to create things that may have not been fully baked yet. I mean, season 3 of The Mandalorian is arguably, some people love it, some people don't. It sort of, lost the trail a little bit in my opinion, but I still enjoyed most of it. So I think there became this intense pressure to put stuff out. And again, that kind of goes back to that. Is it a sandbox or is it a deeper mythology? And it became a sandbox. And I think that that's okay for those types of stories. But I just don't think they put enough effort into them. I think they rushed them out. You look at, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. You look at something like the Dune show. You look at Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and they don't look like TV shows. They look like mini movies. And there's no reason why Star Wars couldn't do that other than I think it was just, let's get this stuff out the door. And I think that was the pressure that was on Rise of Skywalker, and I think that was the pressure that was on
Definitely.
a lot of the series, and it reflects. Now the problem with that is now you have, the common fan may or may not be too excited about Star Wars anymore. They might feel kind of like, we haven't gotten what we needed, and I'm not going to go back. And that, to your point a minute ago, is why Mandalorian and Grogu is so important. Can Star Wars bring people back to the movie theater? Can it make can it make bank on the opening weekend? And so it's a really interesting thing to watch.
and rushing things out. You know, there were massive production problems behind the scenes of Rogue One and Solo, with directors being switched out or not switched out, depending who you talk to and what they're willing to say. But Dave Filoni, right? So Dave Filoni is this guy. He was George Lucas's protege. He worked hand in hand with George. After Disney bought Star Wars, he was always an authority on what George would do. My big problem with Filoni, as you guys know, if you watch the channel, I'm always open about this. So Filoni, Clone Wars is unmatched. It's a masterpiece. Clone Wars is the best piece of expanded universe lore, apart from Andor, that Star Wars has produced, like outside the films. However, Rebels always disappointed for me because I felt like everybody was a reskin of an original trilogy character. I didn't like that Jedi survived. I didn't think we needed Jedi at that point. Ezra, I always found to be a grating, annoying character. I know I'm in the minority there, but there's a lot about Rebels that I love. But that show in general, I did not care for. And then the show Ahsoka, I just thought was so self-referential for people, was so uninviting for people, and is not even a very good show about Ahsoka Tano, who is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Now, that being said, Filoni can also give us great things like Tales of the Jedi. I think Maul's Shadow Lord is going to be amazing. But I think when he gets too specific with the lore, when he tries to define the Force too much, when it becomes the Mortis gods and things like that, he loses that magic. However, and you guys are saying this in the super chats too, which I'm going to get to in just a second, there's very few people in the world who understand those movies like Dave Filoni, who gets to the heart about the theme of found families, etc. Got a couple super chats to get to here, Pete. We got just a bunch of initials. I'm not sure what it's supposed to mean. Gave us PLN 30. Don't know PLN, but thank you for the PLN. Do we think that Filoni will push for a soft reboot now? He could erase the sequel trilogy via his World Between Worlds and redo the Heir of the Empire movie. I don't think so. I think he's definitely going to redo Heir to the Empire, the Timothy Zahn novels, just with having Thrawn and his thing. But again, I don't think Heir to the Empire is his culmination movie or trilogy, whatever it's going to be, is even going to be a true sequel, because I don't think they'll have Luke and Leia and Han in that. I think it'll be the Rebels characters, including Ezra. It's like my worst nightmare, right? I'll say this. I thought for a long time what they just should have done was just a continuing. I always thought the live action continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker. I never understood why they didn't just tell those stories. And now I kind of think they should. I've been saying for years, I think they should recast. Just recast. Maybe I'm hoping the decision to not recast was Kathleen Kennedy saying that was the reason for Solo failing, which it wasn't, because we all want to see Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. And then I got one more here, and then I got a question for you, Pete. Two more, sorry. From, I just had it. Give me just a second. Scroll. Okay. Boca14 gave us $5. Thank you. His love for Star Wars is key. Every time I have seen Dave talk at Star Wars Celebration, I was moved by his passion and love of Star Wars, excited about the news. Like I said, I agree. I hope Dave Filoni takes a presence where he's able to guide people through. I just want his stuff to be less about his stuff, if that makes sense, because not everybody watched Rebels. And then we got one more super chat here. It's from 122 Super Spider, $5. Thank you so much. I think Dave is a great choice as long as people wrangle and temper his ideas. I couldn't agree more. Pete, what are your thoughts?
Well, here, crazy thought, but you know, there's been talk of Feige coming into Lucasfilm at some point, or you know, he might have a movie. That was a rumor from a couple of years back. I'm hopeful that maybe Feige was spending some time with Dave to help him understand, you know, you can take comic books and you can re-present them, but you got to be mindful of how you do it and rely on people knowing the character. So, but yeah, I mean, that is my biggest fear, because I as much as Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters, as much as I liked Rebels, you weren't wrong, but I enjoyed it. I think it was missing. It didn't connect for people, much like Maul showing up at the end of Solo. I remember I was sitting in the theater, and when Maul showed up, I went with a friend of mine who's, you know, he knows the movies, hasn't watched any animation. Turns to me, goes, "Wait, was this before the prequels, or when did this happen? Because that guy's dead."
Even Baby Yoda confuses some people. Some people, like general fans, think that it is Baby Yoda. So you got to be careful with that kind of timeline shenanigans. That is all. Gave us $5. Said Filoni's great with the animation, but live action, he still has some ways to go. The episodes he directed were the weakest of Mando and Ahsoka.
Can't disagree.
Not disagreeing. I think live action does have a way to go, man. Ahsoka, I'm sorry, but some of those fights, and by the way, The Acolyte had the same problem, right? Those two fights, the fights in the woods in those two series were abysmal. They were so obviously on sound stages. Like, I don't know how you could be in an environment like that. I think they just relied too much on the volume, personally. And Isaac Art gave us $2, gave us a heart sign and a live long and prosper symbol. I can't do the thing. Can you do the thing, Pete?
I can. Yeah, there we go.
Very impressive. And Infinite Multiverse gave us $2 and said, if you guys listen to the new J.A.I. Acob CD. Nope, don't know who that is. Pete?
Okay. Nope, no idea.
Yeah. Gray hair, receding hairline, don't know who that is. Yeah, sorry, so what are your thoughts creatively on Filoni?
I think, again, I think he's a wonderful storyteller. And I think you nailed it in that, I mean, nobody knows more about Star Wars. One of my favorite clips is when he talked about, I think it was during some of the Mando behind the scenes during season 1, when he talked about why Duel of the Fates is so important, and he went into deep various levels from a mythological standpoint, from a just a character development, so he understands it. He tells a mean story when you give him Jedi Adventures, when you give him a 20-minute period to do it. The question will now be, because I do agree, I think Ahsoka really missed it. Ahsoka, I wanted to love that show, and
so bad. We saw it together. The first.
That's right. We did in New York.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is I want to understand more about what it means for him to be running the studio, because he's coming from creative director to studio head. And as you and I both know, and most people know, studio head is a very different role than a creative director. It's putting all these pieces in place. It's putting the pieces on the board. I hope that he demands a sort of through line if there's any multiple movies put together, like his movie, for example, his movies, which if he gets that trilogy, I hope he doesn't direct. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy didn't direct anything, so you got to take it and accept that that's not what you're doing anymore.
I 100% think he will continue to do that.
You think he's going to direct? Yeah.
I got a couple.
Well, and again, as many people have said, and I don't disagree, is there we go.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, good.
You never left.
I just froze. I think I think that could be a real issue, and I'm worried. I mean, especially when you're going to come off of Starfighter, which is going to be directed by somebody who's really, really good at that type of film. So, and I don't know if Dave's ready to do a motion picture. That makes me very nervous.
Well, we'll see. I just hope he doesn't stretch himself too thin. Mogero gave us $2, says, I think Star Wars Rebels is the best Star Wars story ever told. Hey, Star Wars is a restaurant. Order whatever you want off the menu. I'm not going to judge anybody's preference on something. Exactly. Podcast of the Wills said, who is Pete's favorite Obi-Wan Kenobi from Alabama?
That would be my co-host, Nick.
What's up, Nick? Good to see you again. Sort of see you. So there's for a while been this split in Lucasfilm, right? Rumored. I don't know this for sure. I don't work at Lucasfilm. I hope to visit one day. I guess as much as I criticize Dave Filoni, now I never will visit. There's rumored to be a split in Lucasfilm. You had the Filoni verse that was happening, and then you had all the stuff that was shooting in London, like Skeleton Crew, Andor, where just by nature of the ocean between them, maybe Filoni didn't have quite as much say. I would bet that Acolyte would fall into that camp as well. I do think, though, that I look at a show like The Acolyte, and I think that Leslie Headland's a brilliant showrunner, and I think that show just had fundamental storytelling problems that somebody like Filoni, if he was overseeing it, would have had a lot of input. My wish and hope is that his input isn't, oh, well, you should include the Mortis gods. You should include this. You should include that. I think Star Wars works best when it's very simple, when it feels like it could have taken place in feudal Japan or medieval times, but just with laser swords. The more detail we add to it, the more diners we add into it, the more it feels like it's too complicated. And I felt the same way when I read the Expanded Universe novels. It was the same thing. You could tell when a sci-fi writer came in and put their own storytelling onto Star Wars. Joey Clams gave us $2 and said, hire more writers like Tony Gilroy and Star Wars will be fine.
Yeah,
there are no writers like Tony Gilroy.
Well,
like,
yes,
I mean, maybe the people, he had a great writer's room too, but like, I still am in awe of that show. And if Kathleen Kennedy's lasting legacy is she gave us The Mandalorian and she gave us Andor, I think she's done a great job.
Yep.
Pete, we're going to wrap up pretty soon.
Sure.
Oh, and we got Winsome Mello gave us, as a favorite customer. Thank you so much for joining. I promise next week we'll start up higher membership tiers for you guys. That's the ongoing joke. By the way, I don't have images for it, but we do have a lot of really cool Star Wars merch linked below. Some of our parody shirts, Somehow Palpatine Returned, which is one of my favorites. One of our new Andor shirts I really like. I Have Friends Everywhere. That's one of my favorites. That Is All gave us another $2 and said 2 words, Rick Famuyiwa, who's a great director. He directed Wood, I believe, back in 1999. He did some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. I think he did some episodes of Ahsoka as well. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know.
Did I just make that up?
So. I don't think so. Yeah, I think you made that up, but that's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time. I do think Dave Filoni will bring a breath of fresh air into things. I think Lucasfilm did feel stagnant for a long time. And I'll say this. If I'm going to sit back, right, and I want your opinion on this first. If you had to give pass or fail grade for Kathleen Kennedy's time as head of Lucasfilm, what do you give it, pass or fail?
Honestly, that's tough because I think it's thumbs up overall, I think, with some caveats, because there were enough things that that sort of, people will kill me for saying this, but maybe made Star Wars feel a little less special that happened on her watch. But overall, I mean, under her direction, we got some of the best Star Wars as well. And so I think overall it's a thumbs up, but it's not A+ for sure. It's a passing grade.
I'm reading the comments. You guys are thanking us a lot for different things. Thank you guys so much. I wish I had time to address each of them individually. Make sure I got to this one. Okay. I'm going to say fail. I'm going to say her tenure was a failure, but in my opinion means nothing. I cannot even emphasize for everybody watching this how small and pathetic I am. Like I am not an industry insider. I've never created anything, but here's my metric for this, right? Again, Andor, Mandalorian has done some great things. We also have some super chats to get to. So I'm going to explain my rationale here. But when Disney took over Lucasfilm, right? What was the first thing everybody said they want? Episode 7. What happens after Jedi? What's going to be next? Where does the story go? And I don't think you can look at those movies, which were well made and well acted, and say they were not failures, because they did not move the saga forward. Starting with The Force Awakens, they were more interested in looking backward than forward. They were movies that were commentary on the original Star Wars trilogy. And it was a failure. I'm sorry. Like, that's just kind of where I look at. She could have made 5 seasons of Andor, and I still would have said, yeah, but you messed up the most important thing. You gave us a good lightsaber duel in The Acolyte. You gave us a couple great seasons of The Mandalorian, but now and forever, the grandson of Darth Vader just turned evil, just like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. That's I have strong feelings on this.
Well, I think that's a fair point, in that, I think it was, if you look at it, it was early. It was the first time she ever led a studio, right? And I'm not saying that lets her off the hook, because the decision was made by
and
Disney.
She had a lot of pressure on her. Absolutely.
Right. So again, not making excuses, because it's not our job to make excuses for them. But I think I think that may have had something to do with it. I think she allowed the pressure of Bob Iger saying, "Make money, make movies," 100%. And so that was an issue. So yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just going to say pass, simply because I think overall more good than bad.
It's crazy though, because when we talk about Kathleen Kennedy's resume, we talk about all the Spielberg stuff and Schindler's List and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's an incredible body of work. She didn't even have that much of a TV background, I don't think. I think she worked on Young Indiana Jones. Who would have thought that as head of Lucasfilm, her best work would have been the TV shows, and the movies would have been the aspect that would have fallen short.
Yeah.
We got a couple. Sorry, we just got 3 super chats, but finish your point first. Sorry. Okay.
No, I was going to say, and that's one of the challenges with Filoni, is he's great at TV, but who knows how he's going to do it with movies. So I think that's sort of a recurring theme here.
I agree, but I overall think he's going to do great, but I want to make sure there's somebody in the room to tell him no, because I think when Filoni is allowed to just run with it, it gets too self-referential. It gets too wrapped up in his own lore and mythology, and Star Wars is bigger than that. Andy B7808, thanks for the $5, said super chat. You don't have to put super chat at the front anymore, but I appreciate the joke. I think your opinions about his legacy is a great summation. Or her legacy is a great summation. Thank you so much. Eric Von Rees gave us $5. I wonder if Dave Filoni is stretching himself too. I wonder if Dave Filoni is stretching himself too thin, and it might be a good thing. He can shepherd other creatives without getting mired down in the details. Depends on the nature of his shepherding.
Yeah,
and we've got another. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to comment on that one. I mean, having been in corporate America as well, you have some managers who can't let it go. And you have some managers who are really good at saying, you know what, this is too much right now. So you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And if he does that and he hands the right things off and stays on top and looks at the story, then I think it could be hugely successful.
Every Star Wars from now on will have a wolf in it. Like it's going to be guys with wolf heads. Jedi are going to be riding wolves. It's going to be wolf posters. We've got another one from PGKRYWYPLN30. Thanks so much. Expanded Universe was great. It pushed the big story forward. After 9, all we got is prequels. Now we know how Luke's story ends. P.S. Greetings from Poland. You're from Poland. Thank you so much for the Poland 30. Appreciate that. Yeah, I agree. The Expanded Universe wasn't always great. Some of it was. I personally love the High Republic. I think that was a great example of what Lucasfilm Publishing can do, and everybody gets on the same page. Carlos Wren, $10. Stop reading super chats during lives, make it annoying, clunky, and unwatchable. Crybabies will cry whether you read them or not, and nerds will send no matter what. Carlos, I don't think that's fair. I think that if somebody's going to be nice enough to give us some money, then I can break into the conversation, shout them out a little bit. But thank you for the $10. Speaking of nerds that are crying.
Right.
It's funny. Not many of the super chats tonight have been complaining except for yours. But no, we're still working out how to do the lives. I'm new to them. I don't watch a lot of live streams. We actually do. ScreenCrush has a meeting tomorrow. It's why Colton and Tommy aren't here right now because we're going to be. Well, it's why Colton's not here right now because we're going to do the meeting tomorrow, and he's coming in for it from the TV. But we're working it out, and we're going to work out like all the technical details and have more graphics and things like that for you guys. But on the other hand, I kind of like that's a little wonky sometimes. Not when we have technical problems, but it's kind of fun when it's a little on the fly like this. But still, I do appreciate your opinion. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up. We do want to keep hearing from you guys down in the comments. Pete, I got to thank you so much, man. And tell us about your book one more time, please.
Yeah, Who Owns the Myth is part memoir, part mythology, but really a study of fandom and how it reacts to its stories.
It's a great book. You guys, and if you're a Star Wars fan,
get it at whoownsthemyth.com in hardcover and paperback.
We'll link that down below as well. And if you guys are interested not just in the Star Wars lore, but also the mythology of it and how it fits into our society, into your own personal life, Pete's frozen on my end, so I'm going to take him off there. Thanks again, Pete. Link for Pete's book will be down below. And guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for talking to us. Boy, Pete really was frozen for a long time. It's still like on the back log right here. That's pretty funny. Okay. Thank you guys so much. It was great to talk to you about this. And again, thank you so much for watching. And I kind of want to know what you guys think. Like, I tend to be pessimistic about things when it comes to this because I know there's a corporation behind everything, and the corporation is really the hand that's guiding stuff. But hey, man, Dave Filoni loves Star Wars, and I think he's going to find people like him who love Star Wars, and they're going to put Star Wars first. I do wonder if we're going to get a second season of Willow, though. So let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments below. You can also subscribe to my Substack, which would be great. You can help me out there, or find me on our free-to-join Discord server. Links for those are below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.